just so
that would take two, but no one will ever know this again.
yeah.
Everyone
just so I know, so is sharing a little bit more locked down? Because I
I locked it down to host only. So
okay.
I'll hand it to you when it's time to share.
Perfect. Yep.
Okay.
Or you just do everything, which is fine with me.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I could flip through the slides until we get to the point. Well, until you got to do your demo.
No, I meant everything. You do everything.
Yeah. All right. See, very important topic, spam, identifying, managing, reducing spam. So as I said, here, our agenda, what we'll do is we'll go through quick speaker introductions, Peter and myself. We'll talk about identifying spam. As you saw, sometimes it could be deceptive, what's spam or what's not. We'll talk then specifically about your website or blog. Peter will cover that quite a bit. So, managing spam on your WordPress website. I'll talk a bit about reducing spam from your online forms. So if you have a contact form, something like that on your site, we'll talk about things to do to, again, not entirely prevent, but at least reduce spam submissions. I'll also cover a little bit about, how do you prevent your own emails from going to spam? So again, you may legitimately want to send emails to clients, followers, etc. So what are some ways that you can prevent your own emails from going to someone else's spam folder? And then, as I said, we'll do some Q&A, some final thoughts, and kind of what's coming up next. So I'm Ray, one of the co-organizers of the Hartford WordPress Meetup group. I've been a software developer in IT for around 25 plus years. Worked for some large corporations. I've been using WordPress probably 5+ years now, I would say. I have my own business now doing website design using WordPress, been doing that for a couple of years. I live in Newington, Connecticut, married, no kids, one crazy cat, and I'm a geek. Peter.
Hey, I'm Peter Ingersoll. I've been using technology for sales and marketing and creative for a very long time now. I now build and maintain websites for a relatively small group of clients that I like to pay a lot of attention to. All the work I do now is WordPress. I worked at the Hartford Current, so if you know Connecticut, it's our main newspaper, and was lucky enough to be part of kind of the beginning of web stuff. So and doing that, I am a proud autodidact. I'm self-taught in just about everything, which is why I think I like to teach other people. Because I know what it means to just try to go out and find that information yourself. I do live in South Windsor, married with 2 adult children, and 2, well, I gotta change it. They are not kittens anymore. They are cats. They're 1 year old this month. So probably today, now that I think about it. Yeah. Anyway.
And they're not going to jump on your keyboard.
Oh, they've already been running around back there. I took the break to kind of close them up.
All right. So again, this presentation, while it's not specifically related to our project that we're working on, if you go back and if you're reviewing some of our past meetup events, we've been working on this project now for at least over a year or so, using WordPress. So let's get kind of a quick recap of the project. So our goal last year-ish was to build a website from scratch, using WordPress, free plugins. We've been building upon that through each meetup. Sometimes we take breaks for different topics. Today's topic, like I said, we're not necessarily building any new functionality on the site, but we're going to use that project site as kind of demonstration for some of the things we'll be talking about today. So again, you could always go back and look at that if you like. The goal of the project was to create a fictional nonprofit, as Peter showed, like WP Animal Rescue was our clever name, apparently taken over by somebody else as well. And the goals of the website were just, you can imagine what animal shelter needs: education, donations, etc. So like I said, even though we've been doing something very specific to animal shelters, the topics like tonight are really applicable to any type of website. Here's kind of what we've built. We'll see this a little bit more as we get into the presentation, and we'll take a look at the site itself. So let's start things off a little bit about talking about identifying spam. So hold on, let's see. I'm not sure. I'm going to hold off on letting new people in for now, just so we can see later. So again, one of the first things that's a bit of a challenge is just identifying what is spam and is not spam. So that's kind of one of the first things is if you're starting up a website, depending on what the purpose of your website is, if it's for business, it's for blogging, it's for a nonprofit, in our case of our fictional animal shelter, sometimes it can be a little bit tough to identify, legitimate things versus non-legitimate communications. So again, I guess kind of one of the first things is, why is it really spam a problem? I mean, we all get spam, it's a nuisance. But kind of what are some real issues with spam? I'll cover the left column, Peter, if you want to do the other two. So, so for security is one thing. So a lot of times spam, things you get through email, that's where you can get phishing attacks or malicious code. So you'll see links that somebody says, click on this link. They'll send you a message or something asking you to take an action. So it could be the beginning of really a security attack on your website. In addition, it's a resource drain. It's a resource drain of your time, of your server resources too. So, a website that I manage for a nonprofit, we got hit with a spam bot. We'll talk about those in a second, where it basically sent like 3,000, fake signups. So just think about that. Besides the cleaning up of all those, fake submissions, it ate up some server processing time too during that. So it's a drain on resources. Do you want to cover the other two, Peter?
Yeah. So in addition, you have the whole trust threat. If you're running a site that isn't paying attention to what can happen through comments, and if that information, if what the bad guys are trying to post gets posted, that's going to undermine your site integrity. You're going to not only come off as unprofessional, but potentially put the links out there that are just as hazardous for you as for any of your site visitors. And the negative impact on SEO is that, the search engines, Google is paying attention to that. If there are links to, unsecure or, risky websites for all kinds of reasons, dangerous content links, that's going to be seen, and you might even get flagged as a site not to put into the search results and all. So, paying attention to it at the very least is important, but really kind of having a lockdown so that you don't have these things ultimately hurt you and your users in the long run is important.
So sorry, just had one thing to go back to. So I mentioned this idea of spam bots. So again, not all spam is necessarily people. I mean, sometimes it is, but in most cases, what's really going after your website is a computer program. So it's a program designed to basically, assist some nefarious person or organization with sending spam. So they're usually created under fake accounts, and they'll send spam messages with them. So, if you look at some of the things, it could be a bunch of gibberish. It could be, something that looks halfway legitimate coming from Gmail, et cetera. But it's primarily they're, automated, created fake accounts. And the reason they're using software is because they're capable of sending high volumes of spam, hundreds, thousands, et cetera. And one way that they also work is by, how do they target you, or how do they target email addresses? It's by scraping websites. So, a lot of websites, most people legitimately need to put their contact information on their site. So, your email, your organization's emails, et cetera. These programs will run against your site, find that information, put it into a database, and then start sending messages for everything that you possibly don't want. So that's kind of how they work. Now we'll talk about a couple examples of, these aren't, the exhaustive list, but I'll Peter, maybe you and I we'll take turns flipping through these a little bit, or, covering them. So here's some common ones, I'd say, at least the ones I've certainly seen targeted at website owners. So the first one we're talking about is the copyrighted images scam. So even though I'm saying spam, some of these are spam/scams. And this is something that you can either get from a contact form on your site. I've seen it quite a bit that way, or through a direct email to yourself. Again, they found your email address. And sometimes it looks something like this. You look on the right, the wording may be a little bit different, but there's sometimes what you'll find is these are boilerplate spam messages. You'll see a lot of the phrases are kind of the same. So this one says, I've looked at your website, you're hosting infringing copyrighted images. And here's the thing, it includes a link. So here, click on this link to prove it. And you look at that link, Firebase storage. Don't click on that.
Right.
Number one thing, don't do whatever you do, don't click on that link. And then they'll try to say something legitimate on the bottom, like, oh, we're referencing DMCA, etc. I mean, the numbers here also look a little bit goofy and off. So a lot of people get worried about this, especially non-technical people. I've had clients who've sent this to me saying, hey, Ray, is this real? What do I do? Again, you think about, we talked about this before, when you're building your site, certainly you want to make sure that you aren't using, or that let's say, any images that you're using on your site have been legitimately obtained, you own the copyright, or you're getting them from a, let's say an image place like Unsplash, et cetera, where you're attributing the authors, et cetera. So 99.99% of the time, people most of us, if you're following our best practices, you're legitimately using images that you don't have to worry about this with. And from what I've read too, that if you're going to get a real DMCA kind of takedown or something, it's going to come in the mail. It's physically in the mail. It's not going to come through your contact form. It's not going to come through an email. So this one, I've seen a lot of other folks, website owners. Is this a common one for others?
Yeah, I'm curious. Has anyone else got this?
Put in the chat window. We'll do tallies on which of these are the most common ones.
Yeah, I've definitely seen quite a few of those. The clients do say, "Oh my gosh, what is this?" The links, and we'll talk about this, I think, kind of a number of times, can be to a number of things. I think it's important to know kind of like what these scary links do. They may load malicious software, on your PC. They may be a phishing site where it looks so legit, and what you're doing is you start filling out forms and you're handing over your login information and things like that. So when in doubt, and we'll probably mention this a few times, I think it's really important, is know from the do not click, but if you're curious, you can go try to find something through a direct route. Those, hey, I'm a photographer and I was shocked to find my images on your site, when that that's not the case. You just ignore. But there's some other ones when you're like, did this really come from GoDaddy? Maybe I can come again. That was a recent one. GoDaddy's been sending out things recently. We could talk about that in a little bit in terms of whether that's legit or not, but be careful with those clicks. I'll talk about this one real quick. Yeah, so the domain renewal scam, I wonder if who's gotten this. Over the years, I've gotten quite a few. I get much less to pretty much none, because now I use a registrar where all that information is kept private, so that the information, when you have a domain and you register it with your name and address and all, that's public, unless you have a service or all that sits there in between you and your public listing of your domain information. And maybe when I grab the screen, I'll kind of show how you can see what's available. But yeah, these companies, they're going through and they're looking at this big monster database, and they're seeing who's got a renewal coming up, and you get this letter, and it says, hey, you need to renew your domain service notice, but it's not from a company that you recognize. It's not if you're with GoDaddy or Hover or Namecheap or on down the line and all. It could actually be a real registrar, but they are trying to get you to transfer your registration to them. So yeah, knowing who your actual domain registrar is important. If you read the text, and I'm wondering, somewhere in there it typically will say, this is not a bill, this is a solicitation. And that kind of lets you know that they're trying to trick you, but they are not trying to be so illegal that they aren't telling you, well, this trick that you've got in the mail, it's a solicitation. You don't have to. So know who your registrar is. You can go check your own registration on your registrar, know when your renewal is up, and everything is done through your registrar, not through a letter you get in the mail.
And that usually that thing that you could read in here too, this one says it's you're under no obligation to pay. That's usually in small fonts at the very bottom of the letter.
Yep.
So yeah, they're assuming people can read these things quickly. So, but yeah, you're right. I don't see this as much, but I still do have some clients on occasion. And this one, like I said, tends to arrive, I think, by physical mail, which is kind of catches people's eyes.
Yep.
So the other one too, I hear this quite a bit, is the calls from Google. I got a call from Google. Usually this is the phone call. This typically not through email. I've seen some of these going through email, and it's generally somebody either leaving a voicemail or trying to talk to you and says they claim to be working with Google. And something about your listing. Your listing has problems. It's incorrect. It will be taken down. Again, trying to worry people about how. Again, they're preying on people who don't necessarily understand how search engines work, or just have less technical knowledge. So Google itself says that these are fraudulent calls. I mean, you're not going to get a call from Google. There are times where this Google Assistant may reach out to a handful of businesses just to make sure your business information is correct, make sure your hours are correct and things like that. But you're not going to get a call from, good luck trying to call Google. They're not going to call you either. There is no phone number listed there. So again, one to avoid.
One that's sort of related to this one is the we are in your neighborhood and we're doing photo, the virtual photo taking inside stores for Google, and I've seen some where they imply that they are Google when they're actually a business that is looking to do that. I don't know if the business itself is a fraud, but they certainly present themselves. It's kind of like the old painting your house number on the curb. The town says it needs to be done, and we're going to be in your town, and they imply that they've been assigned by the town when in fact it's just somebody who's coming in and going to charge you $20 to spray paint a number on your curb. So
yeah. And then the other, again, there's tons of these, but just this one's a little bit unusual. This may not affect most people here, but if you're a website developer like myself and Peter and some others on this call as well too, this one actually caught me. So I'm willing to say that early on I didn't recognize this immediately. This is the website development scam. So I think they identify people through LinkedIn, et cetera, where you say you're a website developer. I got this by text. I got this through my Google Voice text. And it kind of starts good, pretty innocuously. So you think about it, you're always looking for new clients, and somebody reaches out and says, hey, do you do web design? And do you accept credit cards? And I thought, well, that's kind of an odd statement. Yeah, sure, of course I accept credit cards. And if you're make a foolish mistake like I did early on to respond and say, yeah, I can do that. All of a sudden you get this weird follow-up text, something like this one, and there's variations to this, but they're asking you like, just to maybe read this, it's basically gibberish about, I'm cola nuts and agriculture and try to build this site and blah, blah, blah. And so getting back to, there's always some trigger or keywords to this. Now this one, do you accept credit cards, is odd. Can you handle this? I've seen that a couple times. Is this something you can handle? Yeah. Like that's weird. So again, with a lot of these, just the general rule of thumb is ignore, delete, block it in your emails, block the number, put it to your spam. Don't respond, because once you start responding, then you're going to get caught up in these loops. You get caught up with people.
So right to just on this same one, the other, if you're a web developer that has a relatively small business like you and I have, we've got our nice group of clients. Somebody from Tennessee, why in the world are they going to contact you? So that's yet another, understand the source. But the whole, do you accept credit cards? Whether you're if you're running even an e-commerce site, and I see this, I've got a high-level e-commerce client, and they get emails, do you accept credit cards? And that's coming from a scam, as opposed to, well, go to our website, buy the product, and enter your credit card. So there's no question that they accept credit cards. They do it online, and it all gets into, if you look up kind of why they ask that, it turns into the whole issue, and it's a really scary thing where they start this cycle of, well, then we overpaid and now we need credit. Now, and it's bizarre what people get caught up in. Now go and buy Amazon gift cards or Best Buy gift cards. and send those back, and then we owe you money, and it gets into a whole, oh, we owe you a lot of money, and what you have to do is it's just like the commercials from 20 years ago. You know, I won the Irish lottery.
Irish lottery. That's right. Harold, you didn't play the Irish lottery.
Did you? No. It's the same
The
warning.
Nigerian prince. Yes.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so there's plenty more, and again, I'd love to hear other people's. So we'll have time at the end to share. You know, no shame here. This is all about
No
learning. Share the ones that you've encountered. So we can have some fun at the end of this going through some of that. So let's talk a little bit now about more some managing on your website or blog. So Peter, I'll see if I can
selectively share.
Yeah, I think so. I think you have to ask, and then now I could do it.
Okay. Got it. Let me first get the screen up in the right place. All righty. And screen share. Host disabled participant screen sharing. I say okay. So did you get a message, or do you need to specifically?
You can. I didn't get one from you. Hold on one second. Oh, you know what I can make you 1 second.
Co-host?
Yeah, maybe we can co-host. There you go.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah, look, we got two of our friends coming back too. Sorry, Peter Parker.
All righty. So you see my managing spam on your website blog?
Yep.
Okay, so kind of the main thing that I think we're most of us have dealt with, and really, you know, this whole topic applies to those who are even allowing comments on their website, but the whole idea of, you know, what shows up on your blog. So the main topic of the evening for me is all around comment spam. That is spam posted in comments. So if you have a blog post and you're allowing discussions, and somebody posts something in the comment that is not, it's disingenuous at best. It is spam, things to pay attention to. Why are they doing it? They're attempting to get users to click on those bad links. Don't click it. Or generate backlinks. There's again a lot of things that are trying to happen. You know, SEO trying to, you know, do what might have worked a gajillion years ago. You know, where ping back something that says, "Hey, you're on my website now, and look, we're linked together, and isn't that great? We're so important." But you know, while that is still something that people are trying to do, it doesn't really help them, and it ultimately can hurt you. So, but that's what they're trying to do. Comments can be potentially left on posts, even pages, on media, and custom post types, depending on whether that comments and the discussion is turned on for any of those things. At the very least, it's annoying, and you know, but it can ultimately be even dangerous. So there's a lot of things to pay attention to. So one of the first things you might want to do is decide if you need or want comments and allow discussions in the first place. If you lock down all comments and all discussions on your website, you won't have comment spam for the most part, although it can sneak through depending on having a couple of things in place. I've seen that happen. And WordPress itself has gotten better at managing that, and you could kind of quickly find out, like, you know, gee, I didn't know that page had comments open, even though there's not a comment form being shown because it's not in the template, on and on, but literally the discussions were allowed, and that's pretty easy to find. The bots will find it if it's there as something to be done. But for the most part, the first thing is to decide if you need or want comments and allow discussions. Comments, allowing people to leave responses to a blog post are good for community-based websites. Specific topics where people you know, have something to say and to contribute. Blogs usually invite interaction, which means you need to pay more attention to it. But you know, it's good to say, hey, you know, we're having a dialogue here. I know we've got a few people on the call. our gardeners, gardening with Madman, allowing comments because people might have questions about a beautifully written blog post about gardening, or hey, this is what worked for me and what didn't work for me. So having comments on is good, but needing to monitor them is that much more important if doing it. Business sites might not need to have comments put on. If you're not interacting with your customers through that kind of interaction, you may be doing blog posts informationally, but you might not be inviting direct interaction with people in that blog. So you can just say, hey, this post or all my posts, I don't want to have any blogs turned on. And you can be very selective on how you manage that, deciding whether it's by page or all posts or things like that. And we'll demonstrate some of that in a little bit. So one of the main things is, and what we're trying to do with our build site and all, is first look at what we can do within core itself, within WordPress, minimize the number of plugins. We'll talk about why plugins can help and are important. But there's a lot of things to do that you just need to pay attention to that are built into core. And that's most everything that you're looking for is under, in terms of default settings and how to manage spam, or under settings discussion. That discussion tab, and we'll look at that in a demo to kind of go through kind of each one of these things, allows you to set defaults, whether you even, does a new post automatically allow a discussion, comments to be added or not? Who gets notified of what? Do they need to be signed in, and on and on? We'll talk about some of those types of things. So setting those posting rules, the interaction rules are all kind of done here. Again, for as default, and also in some cases, kind of universally, if a comment is allowed, then what to do is managed here. And there's even a place here where you can create lists of words to moderate, say, hey, I want to check anybody who uses these words, or just simply disallow. And there's an interesting comment on that. It's something that I think people don't quite realize it's there. And then it's like, is it even valuable at this point? We'll talk about that in a minute. The discussion rules per post is where you get more granular. Maybe you have all discussions by default turned off, but you have this one where you actually want to generate, you can actually allow comments within that post. So when you're editing a post, you can turn some of that discussion comments, allow comments on or off individually. And there are ways of bulk editing in the post admin list, sort of kind of in between the full default, and even in some ways, and maybe some people on the call here have run into this, I know I have, where you inherit a site, or there's a site there and they left all the comments on, and now they're getting killed by spam, and you want to go and turn off all commenting on all the posts. And there's ways of doing it either with a plugin or by bulk editing, and you might want to approach that depending on how many posts you have to manage. So there's a lot of ways to do that. Managing spam on your website, the approve, mark as spam, delete when you go into your comment section of the admin. So admin, right in that first set of links in the normally black bar on the left side, if you're set up for that. You have a comment section. If there are new posts there, you'll have a little badge. It'll tell you how many are there. You link on that, and that's where you'll see, all of the spam that you may have got. Because you probably see, if you've got comments turned on, you're gonna, and if you don't have certain things in place to block spam, you're going to have to manage it. It's going to be here. Hopefully you haven't just allowed everything to go on your site, and we'll show about that. You want to moderate this, and there's also bulk editing here. You can say, hey, everything I'm seeing in this screen just move to spam, or I have one where basically click all except for go to that one that's okay, unclick that, and then say move to spam. So there's ways of managing that. Now the need for plugins is kind of interesting when they deal with spam, because they can help a lot with how spam is managed, and how dealing with those bots that are coming to your site. How can you deal with them? In the in the settings where you have on the left, I've got the graphic that talks about the spam words. That's from the codex. The codex is the kind of the old documentation for WordPress. It still exists as things get updated. But there's some interesting language that I came across that I didn't even know was there that says, you know, you've got these ways of setting up these whole lists of spam words, you know, things that are going to be, oh, if they use this word, disallow it. But WordPress itself is literally saying, and the words here is, there was a time when copying and pasting the list below into your WordPress installation would protect you from the vast majority of comments and trackback spams out there. However, that time has long passed. I found that kind of foreboding in the old, you know, and that's where they're actually, you know, WordPress is actually itself recommending plugins. And now one of the main plugins we'll talk about is Akismet, which actually comes default loaded, is the one that WordPress generally will recommend, but there you have other options there. And with those plugins, you have you know, the free and premium. There's a lot of functionality built into it, and then there's also crossover when you get into security. We did a meetup on some security issues a while back. And there are some security plugins that may or may not have spam management built in. There is web hosting that may or may not have security and ways of managing who's coming to your site and who can see your site and all. So there's crossover in a lot of ways. We can't cover every topic, but we're going to show some of the basics here. So, you know, the plugins that I would look at kind of that are some easy ones to recommend. For me, there's one called Disable Comments. Now you can do that in the settings, but again, if you have comments that are not disabled in older posts, and instead of going back, you could pull this plug in and take care of everything. But it also does things like make sure that somebody can't turn on comments when they go to, you know, author can't add comments to a post, or you might not know that depending on how your site is, and even with your theme, you can get comments put on pages. You can actually turn that on and allow that. Not that a lot of cases you would want to do that, but in some cases maybe. But even media, images that end up having this post called an attachment can actually allow comments. And all of a sudden you might see comment spam going, why is this photo have comments? Well, because somewhere in there, comments is not turned off. A plugin like this can you have the option of going in and literally saying, I don't want comments for anything, or for, you know, I want to make sure I'm not getting comments on images and posts and all. I can show that. And then the other ones that I think are easy to recommend, the top two for sure. Akismet is the one that loads default with WordPress. It's by Automatic, and Automatic is the WordPress head company, for lack of a better word, even though we're open source. WordPress.com is from Automatic. I like Anti-Spam B. I think it's just a simple, nice plugin. It does a lot of things locally, where it keeps track of what you're saying is spam locally. And then the Spam Protection Anti-Spam Firewall by CleanTalk and Cerber Security. They start crossing into more of some other security issues and firewall types of things, so they can kind of add more functionality. I think Akismet or Anti-Spam B are good choices. Akismet is free for personal blogs. You can contribute money if you want, but you can say no thank you, and it's free. There are fees for businesses. Anti-Spam B is a free plugin. So let me go to, I am going to go to the dashboard. This is our build site. Is it on the screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is our lovely animal shelter website that we've been building for the last few months. And when we look here under comments, we can see that there's one comment. And the way this admin screen works is it is telling you who has written the comment, what's the link that they provided, what is their comment, and then it's in response to on what page or post or whatever did they comment. So this is an interesting area to pay attention to. You know, where are these comments coming from? And we had this is actually a default. No bot has found this. In fact, I think we had turned comments off. I turned it back on just so that we can see this. But this hello world post, and you can view the post by clicking view post if you're not sure. Here's the hello world post. Here's the one comment by a WordPress commenter. Hi, this is a comment. That's what we see right here. Now this, because we're seeing it on the front end, it has been approved. It is visible to anybody who comes to the site, but you can manage, you can unapprove. This is where you go in and you can individually look at things and say unapprove, reply. You could write your reply. You say, hey, thanks for the nice comment, if it's actually legitimate, and be careful because a lot of the comments say, hey, this is a great post. That was another thing in terms of the clues, right? Is the completely generic, not related to anything type of comment, and the whole thing happens to be the link that they include in the URL link and all. But it's just like, oh, what a wonderful post. I've been looking for this information. This is really helpful. And it literally could apply to anything and nothing all at the same time. But this is where you manage your spam list. You can see if you wanted to, you could actually edit what's there in case there's any reason to, but you could see what was entered as a URL, that type of thing. And not only can you edit on this screen here what to do with it, you can, and it works just like, it actually is, you know, a kind of post. So it works just like post. You have a quick edit where you can just manage things right here in the admin, or right here in this menu, just say, hey, this is trash, or I'm going to spam. The difference between spam and trash is that if you're using plugins that are smart to know what you've put in spam, that then can learn from that, that would be a reason to put something in spam. You could just trash something, just get rid of it if you so wish, or if you're not using any kind of plugin, then it is going to learn from having your spam identified as spam by you. So, you know, if you end up having, and I'm going to show something, trying to do this carefully. This is a site that's in development, and because it's in development, and I'll tell you, the bots will find you, whether you are, you know, really publishing your site or not. There's a whole lot of ways, but here's a site that has, and I'm going to do this quickly because, you know, you can see this is all spam that's come through on this site. And I don't want you to read it too much because a lot of it is like, you know, our childish friend who tried to be in the call earlier, it uses language that can be very offensive in some cases. So there's a lot of things that are like, hey, here's a link, but then in other cases it's like, it's you know, adult content, for example, that's in there. And I could click on the box up here and link and have a bulk edit. Say I have a whole bunch of things that go in here, and you should check this periodically. You should go in there, you'll see that badge if you've got comments turned on. Go to bulk actions and you can say unapprove, approve, mark as spam, move to trash. You can select, and this works just like kind of any other posts that you have. So you've got your posts here, that whole bulk editing is something that you can manage by clicking and then choosing what to do. Coming back to comments, when you bulk edit, there are actually, it's different. I'll show you that in posts where in terms of how you turn things on and off and how you can do it as bulk. But that's sort of the managing what actually got into your comments. Any questions on that before I move to the next part? Ray, anything to add?
No, we just had a lot of like people also mentioning in the chat too about getting getting spam comments. Somebody said about getting comment spam links to buy college term papers.
Yeah,
Stuff you see is shocking. And
yeah, no, exactly, and it's amazing.
Sue has a comment there. Sue, speak up about that. What he said, you got to climb thousands of spam comments. Don't try to delete them all at once. Is that just because from a processing standpoint, it'll like bog things down?
They took down the server.
Did it? Wow.
Yeah. Well, and there's another thing. I don't know if we had that on our list. What's one of the problems? There is a database impact.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a lot of spam comments that you haven't been managing or got away, or, you know, you inherit a site where you come across these, or you just got hit by a bot, you know, you're happily going along and then something hits you and hits every one of your posts that you have to fix. This is an impact on your database. And yeah, that's a good example. And I'm wondering if one of the plugins that basically disallows would literally turn that off, and then you go in at another time and kind of delete and manage a little bit more. There are, you know, clean my, I didn't, we could look that up later, but there are plugins that's for even cleaning up spam, you know, the spam comments. So here's where under settings and discussion, let's talk about what you can do in terms of setting up your defaults for a website. And it's all pretty self-explanatory. But here's where you've got, okay, so attempt to notify any blogs linked to and from this post, allow notifications from other blogs. This is pingbacks and trackback. This is where, when there's a post on your site that has links to another site, they talk back to each other and say, hey, isn't this great? I posted you. Turn that off, because this is one of the things that the spammers are trying to use. It's far less effective now, but they're trying to you know, use this as a way of getting all these servers to talk to each other and go, oh, look how important I am. My URL is being used. Allow people to submit comments on new posts. This is where you can just turn that off. And now by default, when you create a new post, that comments is going to be automatically set to no. Do not allow comments. So if you don't want comments on anything, or if you want to make sure you're only managing it as you're adding things, you can unclick the allow people to submit comments on new posts. Nice way to just say no. Again, going forward, there's ways of kind of cleaning it up for everything with some of the plugins or bulk edits that we can do. The other comment settings, comment author must fill out name and email. You know, at the very least, if you're allowing comments, you're going to want to get some validating information. You're not letting people just post whatever they want, wherever, whenever, however. You know, users must be registered and logged in. Maybe you're running a site where you have a community site where you actually do have registered, logged in users that you're giving them permission by being a member to comment on things. That might be set to yes if that applies to you. The automatically close comments and posts older than 14 days. That's an interesting one. That literally says, okay, takes comments for a while and then close, you know, says, okay, this we no longer want to allow, but those posts will still, those comments will still show anything that you've allowed and have approved to be shown on your front end, but you can set it to automatically then not allow after a certain amount of time. I'm not 100% sure why you would be one way or other, unless that's just timely information. If anyone has used it for a specific case, I'd be interested. Show comments, cookies, opt-in check. This is when we get now into all the privacy rules. Now it's like, okay, if somebody is coming to your site and they've used your site and now they're commenting and you've got an open forum, there's basically the box that says, you know, hey, we're going to store your information, and making that clear is part of the show comment cookies opt-in checkbox. Kind of approves and say, I want you to know that we are keeping your information, which is what you would do with somebody that you're going to be storing and presenting those comments. The enable threaded comments to a certain number of levels deep, you know, that kind of applies. It's almost like, I don't know, if anybody here uses Reddit or something and you see the comments and they go deeper and deeper and deeper because somebody's commenting on a comment and all, and you can decide how deep you want that to go, if you want it to go anywhere past 2 even, you know, and can get unruly, you know, breaking comments and the page. All of this being monitored, being managed as defaults is under this screen here. Email me. So how much do you want to be alerted when anyone posts or when a comment is held for moderation? If you're allowing comments and you want to say, okay, I want to know whenever somebody comments because maybe I want to join the conversation. I want to just make sure that I have monitoring thing, or definitely in the, okay, there's something about I've got my settings so I don't automatically approve them, but of course, you know, in a timely manner, I want to allow them to, I want to check and go, okay, no, this is a good comment. So now it gets put up in a timely manner. That would be a reason why you want to allow an email to come to you telling you that something's being held and go, hey, you want to check this. Before a comment appears, comment must be manually approved. You might say, I want to make sure that everything, I'm not going to automatically approve anything. Any comment that comes through, I need to see, and I'm going to manually approve it. Maybe a good practice, especially again, if you have the kind of site that has a level of interaction that makes this practical. And sometimes you have to, you know, feel for that and go, okay, you know, who's involved here, and I'll say, you know what, all of my registered people who have, once they have an approved comment, they're good. Then you can say, let the conversation happen versus, you know, I want to approve everything. And that's where the second box, comment author must have a previously approved comment saying, I've approved your first comment and now we have a discussion going. I'm going to allow anything after that. You could still go into moderate, you could disapprove if somebody, you know, said anything that they shouldn't, but this is a place where you can manage that again for, you know, all posts that you've got going on your site. The comment moderation and disallowed comment, this is where you have the list of the bad words, which then gets kind of overridden by WordPress itself saying, yeah, you got that. And what's nice is it handles everything. It's not talking to another server, and it's handled on your system, which also could mean there may be some impact to it, right? So it's got to check that word. It's a pretty fast lookup. But keeping that list of words on your site, and one way to do it is you go online and you Google, you know, list of bad words, list of comment spam words, and you can just copy and paste those in here, or you could just start saying, you know, I'm going to build it myself based on what I see and start building a list of words there.
Hey, Peter, we had a quick question from Jean about the email notification. And I think I know the answer, but I want to hear yours. She says, will the email notification be sent to the admin or can it go to another person? So this is the email me whenever somebody posts a comment. I thought it's just to the admin, but
to the site admin. Yeah. You know, I imagine there are plugins that allow you to have a co-admin or something like that. But by default, out of the box, that all goes to the site admin. Yeah, exactly. When we get into avatars, you know, what's the image when somebody's allowed to post, and if their email address is connected to the Gravatar database, you know how, you know, my picture shows up next to all of the things. There actually is a rating system where you can say whether, you know, what's the rating you're going to show, and do you have a default, you know, the mystery person, which kind of, you know, goes back to, you know, the hello world. I'm out of that, but where your list of people are just the gray little box, you know, that's kind of the default. But that, you know, that the default here is fine for that. But this is where you kind of control all of your discussion settings. Now, when we get into a specific post, like the hello world, this is where, again, just to show, this is where you override so hello world is the post, and on my options for the post so you have your block options. You work in the block. This is in the editor. You have your post options. That's where you have your permalink, your link and all those types of things. Well, you have a discussion. You can't call it a tab. It's the section. And that's where you can say, you know what, I'm not going to allow comments on this. So no longer are comments allowed on that. And you definitely don't want to allow the pingbacks and trackbacks. One thing here, just to remind people, if they're like, well, I don't see that on my screen. This is where, in the new editor, you click on the top 3 buttons, the option setting, which are these 3 dots here. Click preferences. And this is where you can turn on you go to panels, and this is where you can display or not display certain panels, and the discussion choice is there. If you've turned off comments, you don't want to deal with comments, and you don't, everything is safe, you don't want to even have that option, and you don't want to look at it because it takes up some real estate, you can go into your options and turn off discussion so you won't see it on post. So that's just a little piece of info on how that works. So that's on the post side, that's where you would go right into that kind of discussion thing. That's pretty straightforward. Ray, am I missing anything on that you can think of?
No.
Okay. Then in terms of plugins, I'll show you this. I'm going to add the I think if you do a search for spam, you're going to see kind of those top. So you're going to add plugins. There's Anti-Spam B, Akismet, a few others. But the one that I wanted to first add is the disable comments, remove comments, and stop spam. This could be just the handy one that you want. There are ways that you can do this by putting a little code snippet and all, and setting up something. In this case, I think a plugin is fine. This is not a very involved plugin. It just does what it does. So now that I have disabled comments there, I have settings, and I think it's under settings now, disable comments, now that plugin is activated. And now you can say right here, so on specific posts, so settings, disable comments globally, you can say, I don't want comments anywhere. Click, save, done. Or you might say, well, I don't want that. I want on specific, I want to allow it on posts, but I definitely don't want it on pages and media. I don't have that photo that has the attachment page. I don't want to invite any comments on there because there shouldn't be, and the only thing that's going to find it is a bot. So you can disable the avatar. The issue, the comments and all, this gets into a little bit beyond when we started to kind of get into the behind the scenes type of thing. With some of the feeds that happens there, and some of the remote ways that you can manage that, you can just say, hey, turn that off too by save changes. That's kind of all there is to this particular plugin, which is nice. It's a nice simple thing. And here's where there is a delete comments built into a delete comments section here, where you can go in here and go, just get rid of all my comments right now. You can click there and hit delete the comments, and it will, or posts or whatever. I don't know, Sue, what the impact on the database would be with this plugin. So I just know it's something that you could do. I haven't had to do it with thousands. I've had to do it with dozens, and I just use this as a quick little tool. So that first plugin that's nice is the where is it? The disable comments plugin. While it's activated, those rules will be in place. If you deactivate it, now you'll be back to just what your defaults are in the settings. The other one, I've already installed it, but is that I like. Now there's Akismet, and Akismet, we don't have time to go through. You go in and you have to register the fact that you're using Akismet, and then you get an API code, which you then have to basically say, this is me linking my website to the master database of all the Akismet spam stuff. So there is a talking back and forth to a server. Because of that, it's very, very effective. It learns constantly, and it will cut out your spam. And again, you can do it for free. There is some impact of the fact that you are now talking externally to your website. It is pinging another server. Anti-spam B kind of handles everything locally, and with that you've got some similar choices, but you're not overwhelmed with the number of choices that you're dealing with. Trust approved comments. Again, the same type of concept, no review of already commented users. You can leave this, but the one thing that's going to kind of work to your favor is it's learning as to what is spam is going to be, it's going to happen, just like it does with a Kismet, and what doesn't really happen with just core. So core doesn't have a spam filter other than that list of bad words that you put in, but the anti-spam filter that comes with anti-spam B and the Kismet and the others, they will learn and go, okay, this is a word that we are not allowing, and then you can add on to that as you see fit. But this is a pretty straightforward way of filtering it. You can load it and turn it on and already see a benefit through its default settings. So that, I think, is my time, and I think what we need to cover. Anything else?
No,
no. So the comment: do we need to install both a Kismet or anti-spam B? I would, if you load a Kismet, don't load B, and vice versa. They're doing similar things, but in different ways.
And Sue had the comment too about Kismet. Yeah, it's basically you have to set up a WordPress.com account, which I think is also similar for Jetpack as well too. So
yeah,
it's another one of those. It's a free tool from WordPress, which like I said, it does work. But yeah, it's another ID. It's another kind of call to
right.
WordPress servers. So
yes, and Jetpack itself is on the list of comment spam plugins. I did not go into it. I don't know if anyone here has used it. I haven't used Jetpack in quite a long time. I'm just not a big fan of the do everything type of plugins where you're choosing sort of a master plugin, and then you're choosing which plugins within that plugin that you're going to actually turn on. I'm not a personally big fan of that, but I can see the benefit of sort of an all-in-one for those who just are happy working that way.
most people are not a fan.
yeah, there's a whole lot that goes through, but yeah, and what's also nice about these plugins too is that, so if you look over here, so they have an FAQ. They kind of make it as easy as they can to kind of figure out the FAQ is actually in the repository, and then the manual.
Cool.
My mouse is acting up, but anyway, I think that covers most of what I wanted to cover.
Okay. All right. So
anything else that? Yeah.
No, so I can grab the screen back, and then we can always come back if there's questions that come up afterwards.
Yeah, great.
Let me grab desktop back. I advanced through your slides, so
you got it.
Okay, so again, obviously, Peter covered very well, like comment spam, which is something obviously very common for WordPress. But another thing too is, as I said, online forms. So most websites have some kind of online form, even if it's nothing else but just a contact form. So what I'm going to talk a little bit about now is reducing spam submissions that you'll get through your online forms. So like I said, there's a couple of ways to do this, and this is not an exhaustive list, but I just want to cover 3 of the most common ones. And again, there's plugins. I'm sorry, some of this also depends on what you're using for your online form plugin on your website and your technical skills. So again, some of these you may want to use, and they're not exclusive. You can use various methods here. In fact, I'd probably highly recommend you do use a combination of methods. So the 3 I'm going to talk about are, one is called like challenge questions. The other one's the honeypot. And then probably one we're all most familiar with, reCAPTCHA. So what are these things? So challenge questions, I think we've all probably seen this too. And sometimes it's called custom CAPTCHA. This is where you're asked to answer something or provide an answer to whether it's a math question, what's 4 + 4, or a word-based question, etc. but it's part of the online form. So you have to get the answer correct before it really lets you submit or accept your submission of the online form. So what's good about this is it's fairly simple to implement. I'll show an example a little bit in the demo of how you implement one of these. But one of the cons is, depending on your form plugin, you may have to do a little bit of a workaround to implement it. So not every form plugin does this very well, and it just could be annoying. Another one of those things like, what's 4 + 4? So you want to balance, for most of these, you want to balance that friction of, is it worth it? I mean, if you're getting a lot of spam, obviously you want to make things, easy enough for people filling in the form so you don't drive away your visitors. But again, you want it to be effective enough as well. So we'll look at this one in a little bit more detail as I implement this. Another one is again, the honeypot. So the name is kind of a silly, like you put this sweet treat out there, the honey, and you're trying to attract whatever, the bear, I guess, into the honeypot. So what this really is it's a hidden field on your form, and it tricks these bots, because remember, the spam bots are basically just pre-filling in every field on your form. So what happens is this one's hidden, so humans won't see this, and we'll look at this in a second, but humans won't see this, but because a spam bot is really not looking at a form, it's looking at it behind the scenes. Once it fills out that field, now your form knows that it couldn't have been filled out by a person, so it rejects the submission. So the pro about this one is it's very simple to implement if your plugin supports it. And it's from a user standpoint, users don't really get impacted by it. It's not a thing they have to do anything about. So again, that's the pro. Very simple to implement. Again, the con, not all plugins support it, and it's not totally foolproof. Bots are smart. They can see when something's hidden. Some smarter bots can avoid it. And probably the one I think most people are familiar with is reCAPTCHA. So what reCAPTCHA is, it's a spam protection method. It tries to, again, distinguish between a person and a spam bot. And reCAPTCHA, I don't know if it's a trademarked name necessarily or not, but it's managed and implemented by Google. So there's been a couple of iterations of it over time. Probably the ones you're most likely to encounter are either version 2 or version 3. So V2 is probably the one that most people remember. You have to either decipher that crazy squiggly text message, match those stop signs and buses and all that junk, or check a box to say I'm now a robot. So that's the one we've all probably seen. Version 3 is kind of the newer implementation of that. So in theory, it runs automatically when the page loads, and it can be invisible. So somebody doesn't have to answer the images and all that kind of thing. But the way it works is it uses a risk-based scoring method. So based on Google's rules and all that, as the page loads, it really assigns a score to say, is the person or thing filling out the form, is it a human or is it a bot? And then based on that risk score, it lets you, programmatically, you can actually interpret the score and do what you want, but most form plugins are doing that interpretation, and then they're applying some rules, based on what the score is. So, one of the pros of either version 2 or version 3, most people these days are very familiar with this, either doing the I'm not a robot checkbox or whatever. And version 3, if you move to version 3, it vastly improves the user experience. People don't have to do the matching thing. Again, one of the cons is not all form plugins support it. I think more and more are these days, but you may have a free plugin or an old one that doesn't. You may have to go to a premium one to be able to support it. And there is some setup. So there is some setup outside of WordPress to do this. So I'll show you a little bit of that. We won't set it up from scratch, but let's jump into a demo a little bit. So I'm going to show you these 3 different examples. So I'll show you so we're going to look at honeypot, we're going to look at a custom question, then we'll look at reCAPTCHA. So let me bring up ours. So the first one I'll show, because so if people remember, we're doing this demo site, the animal shelter, and our form plugin that we're using is Fluent Forms, which I like, I think Peter likes as well too. It's free, very powerful, the free version. And one of the nice things about Fluent Forms, and just remind folks again, let me open up let me show you our site itself. So on our site, we have a contact form. So first thing I'll show the honeypot. That's probably the quickest one to show and the simplest one. So again, if you look at the form we have right now, these are all the visible fields, right? The name, address, phone, etc. So in Fluent Forms, it's actually under global settings. There's a setting in here called honeypot. So again, this is the free version we're using right now. So your whatever form plugin you may be using, Gravity Forms, etc. I'm not totally certain how many of them provide this for free, but the nice thing Fluent Forms does is you just flip a switch. So once I've turned that on and saved it, now I want to save my settings. So what happens is, let me refresh the screen here so you can see. So on the screen, visibly, nothing's changed, right? It's the same exact fields, but behind the scenes, let me do an inspect here. Behind the scenes, what's happened is way up here, where is it? It's right here. Something got added to this, and it's a hidden field, and it's a checkbox. And it's, so again, the way it's hidden is there's CSS rules saying display none. That's kind of how you hide something in CSS. But just to show you, just for laughs, we can uncheck it and we can make it display. So now let me remove this. So there it is. There's this little checkbox. So again, you think about this, a bot or whatever Spambot's going through here, it's trying to fill in all my information. So it sees this, it doesn't know what this is. In theory, it checks this. And now I'll just put an I'll just say array, whatever, testing. Sorry. There's some other. So what happens now is when I hit the submit form, it's going to stop me. You can't submit the form at this moment. So a person wouldn't see this. Again, if I'm just doing this as, a normal person would never have seen that checkbox, but it prevents the submission basically. So that's the simplest one, a honeypot. And again, I'm not sure different forms I implement this slightly differently, but this is the basic idea behind it. So that's one option. So again, think about these. You can have this in addition to the other things I'm going to show. So I'm going to jump around a little bit because I'm going to show reCAPTCHA now, because I believe reCAPTCHA is also free with the free version of Fluent Forms. Yeah, here it is. So the way reCAPTCHA works is you got to do a little bit of work ahead of time, which is you need to sign up for Google reCAPTCHA. So Google reCAPTCHA. So it ties this to your Gmail account or your Google account, basically. So that's something you want to consider. So if you're working on someone else's website, you may want to make sure that you're using your client's Gmail, etc. So, and I think the free one, you get a limited number of sites you can register. But I won't go through setting one up from scratch. It's fairly simple. But once you set it up, here's what you get. So here's a nonprofit site that I help administer. And so we're using on this site, we're using version 3. Let me just refresh this. Maybe it's changed a little bit. So we're using version 3 of reCAPTCHA. So version 3, if you recall, that's the one where it could be entirely invisible. So once you set it up, once you've created this account, and I'll show just here's what it looks like. The nice thing is it gives you this dashboard as well. So you can always go look over time and see, well, how did it do in preventing spam? So as I said, version 3, the version 3 one really has this scoring thing, and they tell you a little bit about this. So, every time someone submits it, it calculates a score behind the scenes to say, 1.0 is 100% good, 0 means 100% bad. Things are usually kind of in between. So this submission, for example, says like 0.9. So most likely these are all good. So it let them go through. So the first part, like I said, you kind of create an account here, you sign up for it. It's fairly simple. I'll just show you like a fake example. I won't go through it, but when you create this, you just put in a label for whatever you want it to be. You need to put in the website domain. Put the domain. So if we're going to do, let's say our build hartfordwp.com. I won't do it now, but that's where you put that in. And then it lets you choose. So it lets you choose, do you want version 3 or do you want version 2? If you do version 2, which is still okay, and there are some times where I've found I've had to fall back to version 2. One happened to be just with a theme that I was using, that when I used it on mobile, the version 3 thing was failing for some reason. So just by default, without really debugging it in a lot of detail, I fell back to version 2 and everything worked fine. But version 2, the older one, this is where you can do the I'm not a robot. You can do, it still has an invisible one. You can do one for your Android app, etc. So Either one of these will work okay with Fluent Forms. And the way that Fluent Forms will do it is you set it at your global setting. So I won't click on this now because you can see our key. Actually, I don't think we have keys in here. Okay, I think it's not set up. So, and again, this varies depending on your form plugin. Some form plugins, I think even Fluent Forms initially only supported version 2 for quite a while. And then in the free version, then they started supporting version 3. So you would basically put in your site key and secret key. You get that from Google. And then you save it at a global level. And then once it's saved at a global level, then what you could do is in a particular form. So in our case, if I go to our contact form, let's edit our contact form. There's a field over here now called, let's think it's an advanced. No, I guess it was in general. There's a CAPTCHA field somewhere here, staring me in the face. Where is it? Oh, I guess it is in advanced. Oh, it's in pro. Ooh, okay. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why we didn't turn it on. All right. So good one. Your mileage may vary on this. Let me show you what it looks like on another site. I thought this might happen here. All right. This is my other site that I actually have the pro version installed. So let's go to all forms. I've got a contact form in here as well. Edit this. So this is what it looks like under advanced. Oh, I know why it's not doing it. I'm sorry. The reason it's not doing it is because I actually don't have the keys set up in it.
That's right.
Let me find, oh, I know I could do it on real quick. Sorry.
Yeah, I believe you have to get past that part.
We should on mine. This is on my website, so it doesn't matter here. So on this guy, I definitely have the keys. Yeah, because there's a CAPTCHA. So this is what the field looks like. I won't delete them. So you basically drag the CAPTCHA field over, and it basically says reCAPTCHA. There's not a lot of styling you can do to it, unfortunately. That's one of the things too. I've seen some people say, "Oh, I want to get rid of this. I want to change the styling." I think it's in the terms of service that you're limited in terms of what you're technically allowed to do of a styling. And this one happens to be the version 2 one, so it's the checkbox. So again, look at your form plugin. The reCAPTCHA field itself may be part of your free version or your pro version. So the other, since I'm on this one too, the last thing I'll show is the challenge question. So, again, this one also, depending on your plugin, you may have to implement this slightly differently. In this case, for Fluent Forms, basically what I did was, so I first created a question on my form, and this could be anything, but you want to make it simple. So I added a question. This is simple text field. So what is 4 + 4? And the thing is, I add the field here just as a visible field because somebody needs to see it. But on the back end of Fluent Forms, in the settings section, settings and integrations, there's a setting in here called, where is it? Advanced. Oh, here we go. This normally be unchecked. So under advanced form validation, I collect. So again, depending on your form plugin, you'd have to look at how you do this. But here I check it and I say, I want this form submission to proceed or fail if all the following are true. So I've got my question there. I've added what is 4 + 4. So if somebody says anything but 8, so if it's not equal to 8, then fail, and then give them this message. So sorry, the math answer is incorrect. Please try again. What I've seen some other plugins, I forget which one it was particularly, maybe it's WP Forms or one of those other ones. They actually have challenge questions as a input field that you can just drag to your form, and it can randomize it too, which is really nice. Yeah. So it can be a math question, it could be something else. So this one you may want to look at whatever your form plugin is. It may call it custom CAPTCHA instead of custom field name, but look at the implementation. It may vary, but the idea is pretty much the same. You want to prevent the submission based on somebody getting this incorrect. Okay, so that's the forms. Let me just do this next section quick, and then we'll also hopefully have some time to follow up some of the comments and other questions. So meanwhile, the other part of this is, okay, let's say you've prevented online forms, spam going through online forms. Well, how do you want your legitimate email to go through? So from your website, let's say you have WooCommerce or e-commerce on your site and you're sending receipts to people, various reasons, or you have a contact form, you want to send somebody, hey, thank you for your comment, et cetera, et cetera. So Here's some common reasons why your emails, legitimate emails may go to somebody else's spam. Well, one is people may just incorrectly mark them as spam. And I see this quite often for newsletters. So let's say that you've done the right thing. You set up a Constant Contact or a MailChimp newsletter. You set it up on your website. And you've either, here's where things come into a gray area. If you've added people without their permission, well, guess what? They're probably going to think you are spam because technically, you are sending them stuff without their permission. Or I've seen this more often where a client has set up an email list, but they're so infrequent, in terms of sending their newsletters, that people just forget and they're like, why am I getting this junk? What is this stuff? So they mark it as spam. So in that case, there's not a lot you can do. Quite honestly, somebody has said it's spam. You could reach out to them and say, hey, I noticed you marked it as spam. Please reconsider, et cetera, et cetera. That unfortunately, may be a lost cause. So, the key to this is make sure your content's compelling, make sure people recognize it, that it's not spam. We'll talk about this, that falls into this next piece. So, sometimes the subject line of what you're sending people may trigger either automated spam filters or may just trigger people's spam detectors in their brains to say, this is junk. So, certain keywords, for example, urgent, no cost, free, just think of the stuff that you get and you automatically say, this is garbage, so try to avoid those, try to avoid those kind of words in your subjects or your newsletter subjects. MailChimp is actually pretty good about this. I don't use Constant Contact as much, but when you put in a subject line in MailChimp, it'll tell you, is it too long, or, is there something about it that may falsely trigger a flag. What I've seen too is because I help support this group that does like Polish genealogy. We've had things automatic or inaccurately fall into spam folders. We've used foreign words like Polish words or Russian words. And then we're like, why come no one's opened this thing? It's like, oh, well, okay, that makes sense. So we've learned to don't put that in the subject, you can put it in the body, etc. So, just be careful if you're doing something like that. A couple other just quick ones too. One is, and this is quite often, if you're using the default WordPress send mail application, by default, WordPress will use WordPress as the sender, as the from. So some people see that like, what is this junk? Who is this WordPress? So there's ways around that. You can use plugins like WP Mail SMTP, set that up so you can change the from. So you can change it to yourself or your business, whatever. So you can make a more accurate representation of that. Another one is that your domain itself has not been authenticated. So this in particular, I see quite a bit for if you're using a third-party service like MailChimp, etc. So if you think about the way MailChimp works, it's sending your mailings, but it's trying to send it kind of using your domain name. So it's trying to send it as yourdomain.com or whatever. So you want to make sure, though, that your email from your domain is set up and linked properly to MailChimp. So I have a link to this later if you're using something like MailChimp or Constant Contact of how to do that. They walk you through the steps pretty quickly. But basically what you're doing is you're adding a record. It's called like a DKIM is one of them, this domain keys identified record. You have to add that in your domain registrar. So if you're using GoDaddy or something like that, you have to go into your DNS settings. So this might be one where if you're not very technical, you may walk through some steps or talk to your domain registrar, have them help you through this. They do it quite a bit, or your hosting company, if that's where your domain is set up. And Peter, I think you added this.
Yeah, I did. Great. Yeah. And you can hear me, right?
Yep.
Yep. So yeah. So another thing that could happen is your domain could be blacklisted. That's happened to accounts that I know where they're saying, hey, their email, they're getting notices not getting through, or they're blacklisted, especially if you're sending email to, say, a business that has a corporate IT, they may be making sure that all their mail is being, scrubbed, and they're going against things like blacklists to make sure that, oh, wait a minute, only spam comes from a particular IP address. You can land on one of those relatively easy. It could be accidental. It could be because of a certain short amount of time something got sent out that triggers that there's a that your IP address gets blacklisted. If you're on shared hosting, and this happens for sure, another website might start sending out a lot of spam, and now you're all in the same pool by that blacklist, and it says this particular IP address sends out bad email, and it might not be you, but it could be them, and you could land on the list. And here's three. There's many places you can check that, but the MX Toolbox is where I typically start with. It's a place where you can go in, put in your domain name or your IP address, and then it checks dozens and dozens of email blacklists out there, and you can find out if you landed on one. And then if you do, there are ways that you can appeal or just wait, because a lot of times these are self-scrubbing and things like that. This is one reason why, like a MailChimp or whatever, they are so careful about, the kind of emails that come out of their systems, because they don't want to have their servers be blacklisted when their whole business is sending emails out of these servers, even though they have different ones. So that's one thing to check to see, and these are the types of things that you could do, is just due diligence, occasionally go out there and go, hey, have I landed on any blacklists, just as a matter of a quick lookup.
And this could be, it can be a really tricky problem to diagnose, because there's so many different ways you could end up in somebody's spam. Like I know someone else who, she wasn't getting our emails, and the problem was because, and she's using like Comcast or Cox as her email, her email service, and they have their own spam filters further up the line, and there's rules that were invisible to her. She never saw those rules. She's like, you're not in my spam folder. And we kept saying, well, we know we sent you the email. So, it's very difficult to track where did the thing get lost in between. So that goes back to, at some point, all these things they're trying to remedy it in terms of making sure that at least your domain doesn't have any red flags on it, that your subject is something that won't inadvertently fall into one of these automated filters. But unfortunately, some of these, it may just take talking to a person, walking through the steps, and sort of backtracking, seeing, where did things fail. Kind of a related subject, slightly related to, is just in terms of your email itself. So how are your emails being sent? And that's where I said that WP SMTP, just making sure things are actually being sent. When you think, sometimes you're like, oh, it must have gone through the spam. Well, maybe it just didn't get sent. Maybe it's lost in your end somewhere in the ether. So that's where things like, again, Mailgun or those other third-party mail services are another one too that could help at least guarantee or improve the odds of your email getting to somebody else.
Yeah, and there's one other thing that we haven't talked about, is also checking your own email spam folder. That's, it's an easy little thing to forget, but you may find emails that are coming from your website landing in your own spam folder. Maybe it's an admin email that tells you, you're moderating spam, and you're saying, hey, when I get a comment comes to my website, notify me. And you're going, well, no, I never see the notifications. Check that spam folder every once in a while. I see a lot of legitimate stuff that from sites where the majority goes through fine, but I could still find plenty of legitimate, say, form inquiries land in a spam folder based on some set of variables triggering, oh, this might be spam. It could be the way the person, their own inquiry was written. So check your own spam folder.
So again, tricky one to deduce. So kind of just wrapping things up a little bit. I know we have some comments. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of time to cover these. So we'll send out some of the further resources on this. I think the big takeaway from this is, again, back to the title of this presentation. The goal is to get better at this over time. So sometimes identifying is manually just getting your brain more attuned to what is spam versus what's not. Sometimes it's identifying automated, like Peter said, some plugins or other things. So taking the burden off of you of catching everything. And then managing, so that's sadly, when you're a website owner, it's these tasks that you have. Your tasks are updating your plugins, maintaining your site, backups. Managing spam is a task as a website owner, unfortunately, just taking care of cleaning out comments, etc. And then finally reducing. We all want to reduce it, but you're never necessarily going to eliminate it all. I mean, that's the thing. You want to try different techniques too and see what works, but also be sure that what you're implementing isn't so onerous that you're blocking legitimate requests or blocking legitimate discussion on your site. So there's a bit of a balance there. So hopefully people got some good ideas from this. Was there any other stuff in the chat that questions or things that we've missed?
Well, there was one comment that I liked because I had heard this and have not used it, and it kind of applies to our site, and that is the plugin Zero Spam for WordPress.
Oh, never heard about that one.
Yeah, forgive me for not remembering.
Was it Bridget? Yeah.
Posted it. And I have heard about this, and what's nice is when you look at the description, they're part of their philosophy is basically no captcha. Spam isn't a user's problem, meaning, the whole making a site visitor do the whole captcha thing versus being able to. But this appears to work with Zero Spam for WordPress. Also protects Fluent forms, WP forms. Contact Form 7. I know that there are other, because Contact Form 7, which I'm not a fan of, but it's so prevalent, there are specific Contact Form 7 plugins. But this one I want to try this one with forms. A lot of us use premium forms. Sue mentioned Gravity Forms, and there are like Gravity Form 0 is something I use something else with that. I find that the premiums, the honeypot, that little thing, honestly doesn't work for me. I turn it on and the spam comes through. So, using some of the other tools, or like this type of thing where it's looking at words, I want to try this one in Zero Spam and see what it does. And then the other one, in terms of you mentioned I've kind of moved to the Fluent SMTP plugin, which is new, relatively new. The WP SMTP has been around for a long time. Fluent, which makes Fluent forms and all, they've got their own, and I've been finding I prefer it.
There's other, and Sue mentions too, even I think it's true over time. I mean, here's the thing, just like we saw earlier tonight, where there's a will from demented people or bots, there's a way. So your best thing to do is just try to get ahead of the craziness. So yeah, unfortunately they learn over time, and that's what you said. Honeypot, I find the same thing too. It's not really effective much anymore, but I still turn it on by default. Just to say, why not? It's free, it doesn't add anything, so why not just throw it in there? The challenge questions, that one I tend to not use as much. I'll just throw reCAPTCHA on and find that it's probably just as effective as a challenge question, because again, they can figure that out too. And I know there's different types of CAPTCHA too. I haven't played around with it, but if anyone uses Fluent Forms, there's a H CAPTCHA in there as well too. I don't know if it's a newer version. So your mileage may vary. Try different things. Belt and suspenders. I think that's the theme.
Yeah. In terms of some of the manual stuff that I do, you'll see stuff where I'll help a client out. They don't get so many inquiries, but they get these legitimate looking inquiries. But then you see an address that doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, where the country and the city, where nothing matches, and it like ridiculously obviously doesn't match. And wonder, that's an easy database to fix. Make sure that the city is in the state, is in the country, kind of thing. But there's definitely a lot of red flags out there, going back all the way back to the beginning. Just tread lightly. Yeah.
The one I'm seeing a lot, and maybe it's just because of a couple of the organizations that I'm helping out with, is the cleaning service one. Where are all these cleaning services suddenly contacting people saying, I'd like to contact you. And the other one's a guest blogger. Again, you got a website, you can say, I want to create some content for your site, guest blogger.
Yeah. I get those. I still get the, hey, you want to be #1 in Google, and that's all the SEO stuff. Get that all the time. Oh, I took a look at your site and it's got great content, but I noticed that you're not #1 in Google. It's the same stuff we've been getting forever.
Or again, for I want to send you more clients. I mean, I have a list of XYZ. I'll send you to get more plumbers. Like, I'm good.
So now we're coming to the end, but does anybody else have any stories about some of the stuff that they've got, or anyone brave enough to tell about like something where they kind of got caught up into something that they wish they hadn't?
Sue was going to share a story about what was it behind the plugin? You said that there was some history behind that spam plugin.
Disable comments.
Oh,
The disable comments plugin was written by Samir Shah in 2011. It has more than 1 million installations. It's great. If you want to stop comments, it'll do it. Anyway, like the rest of us, Samir got older. And Samir has other interests, and he didn't want to continue just making the plugin to keep working, but he wanted it to be free. It's GPL. He wanted all of that. So he put up a bidding site where any company, any group that would take over the plugin, all the money that they bid would go to EAF, which is Effective Altruism Funds. And he got a ton of money from some company who's now taken it over and guarantees that it will forever be free. And that's just so WordPress. You know, it's just such a good story. And it's like the two of you guys are doing this once a month, giving up your time planning for it because it's open source, because it's the community. And I just thought that should be mentioned.
excellent.
That's it. Got nothing else. That's it.
Nice.
That's a good story. Thank you.
Well, like I said,
With all this craziness, there's some goodness. So that's good. Yeah.
I left. It took us this long to actually get Zoom bombed. That's just kind of shocking too. So,
Hey, we got a new story to tell.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, hopefully you got some ideas here. Again, I know we have, the nice thing about our group too is that we have such a variety of website owners. I know we have very experienced, we have people running blogs, we have people running, businesses, nonprofits, etc. But I said the one common thing we all share is spam. We're all targets for, we all receive it to our personal accounts, but especially as website owners. So, as always, we'll send out the presentation links, the link to the recording afterwards. But come to the Facebook group too. I think another thing, again, just kind of reemphasize my own personal example there of that mysterious text I received. Back then I wasn't really part of a community like this. Didn't have other people to bounce this off of. But rather than just think twice, ask others. Many people have found the same targets or something you think that's unique. Come to our Facebook group, reach out to Peter or myself and say, hey, what do you think about this thing? Does this pass the smell test? Especially when you're new, like I was, first getting started development. I didn't know any better. I was like, oh, someone's reaching out to me, credit card, sure.
Yeah.
I'll take coins, whatever, but if it's too good to be true, it probably is. So, but again, reach out to us, join our community on Facebook. I think we're happy to help out with this or any other kind of problems you have or questions you have on WordPress. So anything else, any parting thoughts there, Peter? Any other wrap up stuff?
No, I love kind of looking into stuff and the whole, what is somebody trying to do when they're trying to be, when you're trying to spam me or whatever, and understanding the whole process and kind of getting caught up and watching. Boy, you want to see something interesting, watch a YouTube channel of these people who kind of get the spammers back by kind of reverse engineering the phone connection when they're trying to be taken advantage of, and it's scary what they're doing. So this idea of just being aware and asking and saying, and things happen new, it's really interesting. And yeah, absolutely feel free to ask anytime, because it's interesting and we like to help.
All right. Well, thanks everyone again for joining us for our meetup this month. Good to see everyone again, and hope to see you again next month. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.